Sister Vassa, and I'm having my coffee here in a very cold Vienna in Austria. I apologize that this episode is coming out a little bit late, but we were all at the hospital all night, and I only came back to film this episode, and actually I have to get right back to the hospital. You see, one of our new crew members, Anka from Poland, is having a baby. Anka joined us just several weeks ago after we met on a bridge over the Danube Canal. She was doing this little juggling act and wearing this really large frilly costume. Poor thing, just 18 years old and out on the streets like that and trying to collect money in a hat. She had such an interesting costume and she looked so talented that I thought, maybe we could use her here. She could help with the set design or something. To be honest, I didn't notice that she was pregnant because of her costume. But anyway, the great news is that we are unexpectedly expecting a baby. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. It is the third week of December, and we are nearing the Forefeast of Christmas. So today, let's discuss what a Forefeast is in the Byzantine tradition, that is, Proeortia in Greek and Предпразднство in Slavonic. Oh, and I hope you like these nice flowers that we received just a few days ago, and these blinking Christmas decorations are a nice touch by Anka. The Forefeast of Nativity or Christmas officially begins, according to the Byzantine liturgical calendar, on December 20th and intensifies our preparation for the feast. We had already been preparing for Christmas during the entire Nativity fast, which we talked about last week in our previous episode. And in our church services, we have already begun to get a foretaste of Christmas because the hymnographic texts start mentioning the upcoming event of the birth of Christ already on November 21st, on the feast of the entrance of the Mother of God into the temple, when we begin to sing the irmin or hymns of the Christmas canon, which begin with the words, "Christ is born, glorify him. Christ comes from heaven, go to meet him. Christ is on earth, be exalted." So the Forefeast happens gradually, already in November, inviting us to begin focusing our thoughts on Bethlehem. But this focus on Bethlehem intensifies 5 days before Christmas in the official Forefeast, which, as I already said, begins on December 20th. Now, fasting is intensified from this day, and now all the hymnographic texts focus on the event of the Nativity of Christ. Now the liturgical texts draw us into all the details of the upcoming event, transferring us into the midst of it. Here is one example from the service on December 20th. Let us lift up our minds and hearts to Bethlehem and imagine the Virgin on her way to the cave to give birth to the Lord of all, our God. Thus we are offered certain meditations, certain pictures, if you will, to aid us in our prayer, to aid us first in our communal anticipation of the feast, and then finally in its celebration. But note that these aids to prayer do exist not only in church, but also all around us, because we are fortunate enough, at least in the West, to live in a society that makes a big deal about Christmas, even if some of us grumble about its commercialization. All of these things, including our own Christmas shopping, can be a useful reminder to us, if we use them properly, of the upcoming event. A few weeks ago I was in Starbucks with a friend, and this friend was grumbling that in November there were already Christmas carols playing, and I thought, why grumble? Already in November we have the Christmas hymns from the Christmas canon sung in our churches, and let's face it, many of us never go to matins and never hear these words, so let's accept with gratitude the little non-liturgical reminders of the upcoming feast. These non-liturgical reminders, by the way, are especially important for children who cannot yet appreciate things like Byzantine hymnography. So the Forefeast does and should happen not only in church, but in our homes and on the streets, because it's Christmas time in the city, and that's a good thing.
Silver bells, it's Christmas time in the city. Ring-a-ling.
As we intensify our focus on the upcoming feast of Christ's birth in Bethlehem, let's talk a little bit about one aspect of the events surrounding his birth in a manger, and that is ambivalence or uncertainty. We all live with uncertainty to a greater or lesser degree in various life situations and in our relationships with other people. So let's take a look at the ambivalence that accompanied the Holy Virgin and Joseph, who lived peacefully with ambivalence. First of all, Saint Joseph was confronted with an extremely ambivalent situation when he noticed that she, the virgin betrothed to him, was pregnant, and he knew he was not the father. Now, despite the extreme ambivalence of this state of affairs, Joseph did not do anything rash. The Gospel of Matthew tells us, "Then Joseph, her husband, being a just man, and not wanting to expose her to public disgrace, planned to dismiss her quietly." But he doesn't do this because, as we all know, an angel appeared to him in a dream and revealed that Mary had conceived of the Holy Spirit. But the Holy Virgin herself, as far as we know, said nothing in her own defense. And then when it came time to give birth, as we also all know, she was compelled to do this in a manger because there were no rooms available in the local inn.
Cold was the night and hard was the ground.
Now, all of this could have raised many questions in the minds of Saint Joseph and the Mother of God. Why wasn't God providing for them? Why wasn't God watching?
I wasn't God watching. Why wasn't
Then
God?
the shepherds, to whom the birth of Christ was revealed, came to see the child and started telling everyone about their revelation. But the Mother of God, again, quietly observes all these events, as the Gospel of Luke tells us, but Mary kept all these things and pondered them in her heart. Psychologists today say that one of the greatest life skills and signs of maturity is the ability to live peacefully with ambiguity and ambivalence. It is fundamentalists and absolutists, and sometimes our own perfectionism, that would like the world to be two-dimensional or black and white. But it simply isn't. Life was not that simple even at one of the most important moments in the history of mankind, the birth of Christ. Ambivalence or uncertainty is part of the mystery and beauty of life, and it keeps us alert, so we pay attention more. It is like when someone is not speaking very clearly, and we strain to hear what the person is saying. We pay more attention. Ambivalence also reminds us to slow down and be careful, like when we are driving on a foggy night. With less ambiguity, or with less uncertainty in life, we would have less need for discernment, intelligence, free will, and finally, faith. So let us take heart when we are faced with ambiguity, perhaps in our relationships, when we are not sure what another person is thinking or how they feel about us, or when we face economic insecurity. Because Christ is born into an ambivalent world, and those who were there to meet him in Bethlehem lived peacefully with ambivalence. That's it for today, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.